Hi everyone, this is Anne McElhenney.
And this is Phelim McAleer.
Welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop. We're 10 days into very crazy times, certainly 10 days, I think it's 10 days here in California, where we have a new normal that's not very normal at all.
Yes. So on this week's Scoop, we have good news from China. We're going to talk about the latest good news from China, but we're going to ask very skeptically, can we trust it? And we talk to the best expert on the planet, the person who knows China better than any. Don't miss that. It's coming up later.
We're also going to talk about media bias, which is still rampant. Even though we've got a massive pandemic across the globe, it doesn't stop the media bias. And we have a piece on panic shopping.
Panic shopping. Is there really panic shopping, or are we just demonizing people who are doing what the government told them to do? I'm not convinced that there is panic shopping. So we're also going to look at why the coronavirus has maybe this is a turning point in the relationship with the left and America with big business, because big business has been our best friend during this coronavirus. We're going to look at the best and the worst of the coronavirus internet, and not surprisingly, the best includes cats from our point of view.
And we have a culture section where we are going to, look at stuff that's available, like fabulous stuff that's available for free right now to stream and to watch and to listen to, and it's great. And we're going to have a recipe, Yes,
and the culture section is going to look the culture section is what to do, what to read, what to watch, what to listen to during the coronavirus lockdown. So let's start first with China. You may have seen the good news that China has zero new cases. In fact, according to the media and the newspapers and everywhere, the big danger to China now is imported cases, them foreigners coming into China. That's great news. If true, as they say. China is an authoritarian country. It's a communist country. So we decided to speak to Jan Jekielek. Jan's an old friend of this program. He's been on, I think, a couple of times now. We've been on his program. Jan works for the Epoch Times.
And Jan is a senior editor at the Epoch Times. He also has his own TV program on Facebook as well for the Epoch Times, called American Thought Leaders. And we thought let's talk to Jan, because more than most people, he's an expert on can we trust the Chinese?
And as he makes the point, it's the Chinese government, not the Chinese people we're talking about, because the Epoch Times actually was set up as a dissident Chinese newspaper. That was the original raison d'etre of the Epoch Times. It's since become an international outlet covering lots of other stories, but it still has unrivaled contacts in China and a skeptical eye, as journalists should. So let's hear Jan talk about China, talk about whether we should believe these statistics, talk about whether there's reason for hope there. So we did the interview just before we came on air here. So let's go now to that interview. Welcome, Jan. First question, great news. China has announced that it has no new cases of the coronavirus, that the only cases they're experiencing are imported cases, that they basically have exterminated the coronavirus, the Wuhan virus. So shouldn't we all be happy in following China's example?
Phelim, this is a kind of an outrageous claim. I mean, by any standard. Let's assume that there has been some work done in China beating it back, which, probably is true. But it's utterly inconceivable that they would have zero new cases. Now, this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that the way that you actually measure deaths and cases and so forth, that all has to do with testing, right? So, I just saw a report very recently, basically suggesting that China just simply stopped testing. So if China stopped testing, there would be no more cases. And of course, there would be no more deaths, because all the deaths would be ascribed to something else and all the cases would be ascribed to something else. The whole thing is outrageous. At the same time, any numbers that you see coming out of China, I was just talking with Congressman Jim Banks about this a couple of days ago. Any numbers, and we've known this very clearly, are just simply suspect. And structurally, incapable of actually being true. On one side, there are incentives at every level of government to in this case, underreport, to not tell the truth. On the other side, there is the Chinese Communist Party narrative that needs to be adhered to. And all of these data, any talking points, anything the spokespeople say, anything they tell the WHO, for example, they told the WHO on January 13th, or maybe even or earlier, WHO announced this with that there wasn't human to human transmission, for example. All of these things aren't in service of the truth or reality. They're in the service of the Chinese Communist Party talking points. So,
Yes.
zero cases is, I personally, I think an outrageous claim at any level to anyone listening should be highly skeptical of that. And there's zero chance that it's true.
So what you're saying is that the Chinese have been dishonest and not transparent about this virus from the beginning. Is that right? And even going as far as to deceive the World Health Organization early in the process?
Actually, the Chinese, in terms of the people, have been actively trying to get the truth out. In fact, there were 8 whistleblowers that tried to tell the truth early on. I'm talking about the 8 that were specifically censored, and basically, it was said that what they're doing is something wrong and terrible. Some of them died because of exposure to this. We're talking about the Chinese Communist Party and the regime hiding information. I don't think the Chinese people are keen to hide it. I think they want the truth out there, actually.
So the Chinese, we're seeing also a story that the Chinese now, of course, are being incredibly generous in lots of parts of the world, particularly in Italy, that they've sent medical experts, and that they're, just and sending medical equipment. Is this something that we should applaud, that the Chinese are getting so benevolent and, kind of reversing the trend of charity, and where they're being the charitable people in pockets all over the world? Is this something to be applauded?
This is the whole thing is the whole situation is kind of really preposterous to me. The reason is that, of course, the Chinese regime is responsible for creating this pandemic. There's actually academic papers that have been sort of explored this, basically by covering it up for a month and a half and then letting 7 odd million people travel out of Wuhan with the knowledge that there is human transmission likely and so forth. Essentially, they've created this global pandemic. We can't say they're necessarily responsible for the initial creation of the virus. We don't know that, right? There's all sorts, but this is also another problem. There's all these rumors. Maybe it came from this P4 lab, but we have no way of actually assessing this stuff because they bulldozed the market where they originally said it originated, and don't allow any independent assessors in there to actually try to figure out what happened. Again, the Chinese Communist Party is repeatedly lies about all these sorts of things, where it's GDP statistics or it's like, their organ transplant statistics. This is something that's been studied extensively. They work as a kind of quadratic equation to cover up the forced organ harvesting that's happening in China, to, of course, anything to do with the virus. Now, by the way, one of the things that has been a lot of in discussion recently is what to call it, of course, right? Originally, it was called Wuhan virus. It came from Wuhan. There's precedent for this. There was, African swine flu, so forth. There's naming by geographical location. It's been called Chinese virus as well. Now, that, of course, there's all these also calls of racism around this, right? This is racist to call it Chinese. Of course, Chinese people aren't responsible. I agree. Actually, I don't think the Chinese people are responsible. The issue at hand is that the Chinese Communist Party is basically using the sensibilities of the West, of people who are sensitive to the racism. Of course, it's very reasonable to be sensitive to racism, but they're basically using that and these, let's call it political correctness in the West, to advance their own narrative, which is it has nothing to do with China. We're hearing, it originated in the US. by the U.S. military, even from an actual high-level spokesperson, right?
Yes.
We're hearing it originated from Italy more recently. All sorts of narratives. Definitely didn't originate from China, though, right? This is all Chinese Communist Party disinformation that's playing out right now. My suggestion, and this is actually the position of the Epoch Times as a whole, is to call it by its most reasonable name, which is CCP virus, Chinese Communist Party virus, to assign credit where credit is due. Okay, so that's what I would like to suggest to your viewers. Hashtag CCP virus. Let's put the credit there, so to speak.
One of the most extraordinary things that I know that you guys have covered is the fact that early on in this pandemic, the Americans actually volunteered to send, very high-level medical experts from here to China to help in any possible way they could to get to the root of what was going on. What was the Chinese response to that? The CCP's response to that?
Oh, they just simply didn't let them in. I mean, they didn't even let the WHO people in until a bit later, right? And these are people, kind of working hand in glove. The WHO has been kind of praising the great response of China and so forth, which is it's kind of hard to imagine how they could say that. They also, used the Chinese Communist Party talking points that the virus isn't transmissible. It's, again, hard to imagine how Chinese researchers could have possibly found that, given its incredible level of, it's incredibly contagious. Basically, that's what we do know. We were writing about it. I think our earliest report is on January 2nd. Then it was kind of an unknown SARS-like pneumonia. We were starting to say, okay, there's something strange going on in China. And, it's so difficult to actually get that information out. Why? Because of censorship and the narrative, which you have to follow the Chinese Communist Party, or you get arrested, or you get, basically put in jail or fired or worse.
What do you think of our colleagues in the media repeating without skepticism the facts as it is that there's no new cases in China?
We do have reports, for example, from Wuhan, that the infection rate and the death rates are 10 times greater. There's some data that has been found, again, very difficult to corroborate. Okay, there's some information about cell phone basically cancellations. In China, you basically need a cell phone to do anything, to make payments, to all sorts of stuff. An astronomical number of these over the last 3 months have basically been canceled. And so the idea is, possibly this is just because these people aren't around anymore, right? There are some other reasons, possibly they're in quarantine, they couldn't renew their account. Anyway, the point being that, again, we just simply don't know. But the idea that China has successfully conquered the CCP virus, right, is just preposterous. And I've also been hearing that there's countries that are letting in flights from China now, while considering even to restrict their own internal transport, again, because they're buying into the Chinese Communist Party propaganda. I think this speaks to the incredible effectiveness of it. Right. I think that to some extent our media, on the generous side, are just simply duped by this. Right. They want to believe that this information is true. They won't. But I do think it's irresponsible to not, at least, as you suggested, Phelim, put an asterisk on it and just say there's no way to verify these numbers. The only way that we could really do this is if we had highly skeptical people go into China and assess everything. I'm talking about people who inherently aren't going to believe what they see until they do a very thorough process. Then maybe we could start to believe that. But the chance of that, while the Chinese Communist Party is in power, is zero.
One of the things they did before they announced these astonishing figures was expel the journalists of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and another large publication. And funny, the Wall Street Journal was doing some excellent reporting on the virus.
So this actually speaks to the challenges. So if the Epoch Times, we chose to just do the straight truth on China. That caused all our journalists 20 years ago that were in there to be arrested, and everyone else had to go underground, and all our sources have been underground since. That's a difficult way to operate. Most media have kind of, made a deal with the devil, so to speak. They, with unwritten rules that you won't report on certain things. We'll let you report on some of these things, but you won't report on these other things, and then you get access. If you don't play ball, if you report more honestly on coronavirus, on CCP virus, then you're going to get turfed, right? Which is what we've seen, because that's the way it plays out. And of course, there's some other propaganda talking points that'll explain why this is great and glorious, and why it's the perfectly legitimate thing to do, and how terribly the Chinese Communist propaganda media are treated in the U.S. and why this is just only a fair response, right? It's so preposterous. I just think it's incredibly dangerous, and I think Italy is the exact case in point. Italy has this close relationship with China. They've signed into the Belt and Road. There's whole communities of Chinese that were traveling back and forth. There was no thought after President Trump, created that travel ban from China, just on the suspicion that something really, really poor is going on. Obviously, he had some intelligence that we didn't necessarily have. And meanwhile, to fight the stigma, again, pulling this racism card, I forget which Italian official, but high-level Italian official instituted a Hug a Chinese Day, right? At a time when nothing wrong with hugging Chinese. I enjoy it myself. I'm just kidding. But the point is that at a time when there were people who had CCP virus, were flying back and forth, because of this level of trust, or this level of I think it's a bit deeper than trust, of a willingness and desire to ingratiate oneself to what the Chinese Communist Party wants, which is, we've seen this pattern in a lot of places. I think inadvertently the officials in Italy basically precipitated this pandemic, but I don't put the blame on them. I put the blame on the Chinese Communist Party officials that basically perpetrated this lie that everything's fine, and then, oh no, it's not fine. Oh, but now we're back to fine. There's zero chance we're back to fine, even if some of it has been beaten back.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jan. And we'd love to have you back on, because I think there's the next questions that will be starting to emerge is how this is going to change relations between China and the rest of the world going forward, or how the rest of the world are going to reassess how they have allowed themselves to become so dependent on China. I think it's a big conversation, and I'd like to do that, if we can do that very soon again.
Yeah. So these are some huge questions, okay? Because we have two things that are happening, okay? One is Western democratic countries are realizing, oh my goodness, we put all our eggs in the Chinese Communist Party basket, and it's not playing out that well, is it? Yeah. Right. And so what do we do about that? Meanwhile, what the Chinese Communist Party is trying to do is position itself as the savior to all the supply chain problems that all these countries have, because they put their eggs in that basket in the first place. As crazy as this sounds, again, it seems to be working in some places. So basically the free countries in the world, if they want to stay free, I think they need to step up and basically make some hard decisions about how to deal with this whole propaganda line.
They certainly need to break the monopoly on so many goods being made only in China. But listen, we're going to leave it for today. Jan, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, stay well.
Stay safe in New York.
And we'll be talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
A sobering interview there. Don't take these figures for granted. If you see the media taking them for granted, be very skeptical. I mean, I'm not saying that they have to say this is a lie, although they, when President Trump makes a claim about something, they say without any evidence President Trump said that. So they should at least say during their reports these figures were provided by the Chinese government, which is an authoritarian government and has been known in the past to mislead and misrepresent and lie about figures. Everyone, I think the American public and the world public deserve that during these times. And, the media is continuing on. You've got other examples of media malpractice.
Well, it's quite amazing. I mean, I just the other day, I just was casually looking at the BBC website, and they had put together this, very clever, by the way, little video. You can imagine the amount of staff they have, the number of researchers they have, all these high-paid, highly qualified journalists who all went to the right journalism schools. So they put together this video, this fabulous video, showing the history, if you like, this recent history of America, 90 days or 60 days of America. And the coronavirus. Let's have a look at it now.
Yeah. Oh, and let's have a look at it and see if you can notice something that's missing.
There's something missing. See if you can work out what's missing.
The first case of China's new and deadly coronavirus has been reported here in the U.S.
Second case of novel coronavirus.
We have very little problem in this country at this moment. 5. We think it's going to have a very good ending for us.
For hundreds of Americans trapped on this cruise ship, away home at last.
Empty shelves greeted Costco customers trying to buy toilet paper.
There are now at least 100 cases of coronavirus in 14 states.
Could cost airlines as much as $113 billion.
6 people have died so far. A growing number of schools and universities around this country have canceled classes.
The stock market suffered its worst losses since the financial crisis of 2008.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe.
NBA is suspending the season.
Now more than 1,030 cases here in the United States.
We will see more cases. Bottom line, it's going to get worse.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
We need to bend the curve. We direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
So when I watched this the first time, I couldn't believe it. I watched it like 3 or 4 times. Like, I filmed to watch it because I thought I have to be wrong. But no, I'm not wrong, and you've probably noticed what was missing. So they're talking about 60 days of America's involvement with the coronavirus. And here's what's missing. They don't mention the rather large piece of news that President Trump on the 31st of January banned all travel from China to the United States. It's you know what, you can't say it's accidental. It is such a massive piece of news to have left out of this, news organization, that's meant to be, that, by the way, paid for by the taxpayers of Britain.
Yeah, and it was significant at the time that he banned all travel. Anyone who'd been to China in the last 14 days could not come to the United States. And he was condemned, President Trump was condemned for being racist. So I want to talk now about panic shopping. This phrase we're hearing a lot about. We're seeing all these empty shelves, and people are being criticized for panic shopping and how unfair it is to other people. I'm not sure I buy this criticism, this demonizing of people who are trying to look after their families. The thing is, we're told to stay at home. We've been told the more you go out, the more you're going to endanger yourself and your community and spread this virus and endanger your country and endanger your economy. So we were told, go out. It's only for emergencies can you go out and exercise. So do you really want people going to the shops every 3 days? Do you really want people going to the shops every week? So that's what will happen so people went out and they bought enough for 2 or 3 weeks.
So people were told to do that. This could be a month or whatever. You need to have enough supplies. And in fact, by the way, the mainstream media were very big into this. The New York Times had an article actually telling you what staples you should have in your pantry and stuff like that, to get rice, to get legumes, to get pulses and stuff, hard cheeses. So people actually, took the advice, and people did go out and start doing that.
They took the advice of the government. 2 weeks. Maybe more, maybe a month. We're also told 8 weeks, 12 weeks, this could be months. So people are being clever. People are being considerate by making big shops, buying, and do you really want people running out, twice a week to buy toilet paper, or once a week to buy toilet paper, or do you want them going once for essentials? So, I know it's great, and it's a great way of, it's kind of anti-American too, because let's criticize consumerism and working class people are stupid. Working class people are doing what they were told. I noticed our consumption has gone up enormously. we're used to working from home. A lot more people. Another thing is, a lot more people are working. Everyone's at home now. Everyone's working from home. So lunch, sometimes they'd have snacks at work. They would have lunch at work. They might get something before they go home. So the number of people shopping, what people want and shop, maybe it's not panic shopping. Maybe it's people shopping more because they're not eating in restaurants. Of course, restaurants are closed. I mean, how many times a week do people eat in restaurants? Many, many times. So where are they going to get that food? They're going to get it in their shops. So even a normal shop now, I notice normally we put on our dishwasher every couple of days, every few days. During this current crisis, we're putting the dishwasher all once a day. So we're eating a lot more food at home. And where are we buying that food? In the shops. So please, I know it's great and we all feel superior when we see these people fighting over the last toilet roll in Costco and we have a good laugh and it goes viral. But, I'm not sure I buy it. Maybe for the next podcast, maybe I'll look more at the figures, how much the increase in shopping has taken place, how much extra food has been bought, and how much is it commensurate with the amount of restaurants that have been closed and what people would normally eat at work. I mean, I saw a piece on Twitter where people were looking at what wasn't sold, and what wasn't sold was very interesting. A lot of it was lunch meat that people would have in their sandwiches for schools and for work. You don't need that now because you can eat at home, but you still have to buy that food. So that's my little piece.
Can I just add a funny thing to the end of that? I just saw something really fabulous on Facebook that I thought was just really funny. And the minute I read it, I thought of you and I, Phelim, because not alone are people, obviously eating more at home in the sense that people are eating all their meals at home, but people are eating more, and a lot of the humor to do with this particular time in people's lives is, like some of the memes are just fabulous, and we'll put up a few of those of before quarantine, before we did safer at home, beautiful body, very thin and all that, and then afterwards, like, you're just huge. And basically people are saying, and I think what it is, and I think it's a human nature thing too, is people are really nervous and scared, and so people are doing stuff that they wouldn't normally do. So they're doing things like, you know what, we will have ice cream at 11 o'clock in the morning because you've just watched a news conference and it's made you nervous or whatever, and people are doing that. So that I think there's quite a lot of, let's put cream on that, yes. Let's have sugar in the tea or whatever, and people have suspended, I think some people have suspended Lent, but it's that kind of thing.
So I want to talk about something that's occurred to me just as this has happened, and I wrote a piece actually about it, and you can read it in the Daily Wire. In fact, we both wrote it. Yeah, the way in the Democratic primaries and on the left in general, corporations are now really, really evil. Corporations are the big bogeymen of American life, and but who are we looking for to save us from this current crisis but corporations? Warren and Sanders, millionaires and billionaires, and Elizabeth Warren, she's been the cheerleader. She introduced the Accountable Capitalism Act, which set to redistribute, and quote, trillions of dollars from companies to the middle class. And she launched a campaign during the primary and an ad where attacking corporate executives for their greed. Sanders, he launched an ad attacking big pharma and attacking big pharma executives for their greed. And now, who are we begging to save us but big pharma? I mean, if you had made big pharma smaller, Bernie Sanders, with 8 years of a Sanders president, and broken up big pharma and made them they wouldn't have the depth of knowledge or science or the infrastructure to find a cure for this as quickly as possible. So let's, I think I know the Democrats have been trying to insert kind of anti-corporate pieces into that new stimulus bill. We're recording this before it's been passed. Maybe it hasn't been passed by the time you're watching this. But please stop. But, fast food nation. Remember that? Oh, we live in a fast food nation. Thank God we live in a fast food nation, because we can all go out now and order food at restaurants.
Well, it's funny actually, because our local Costco, the Costco that we have close to us here, we check on it every now and again to see if it's possible that we could go, if the lines aren't too long. And And every time we've gone there, right, every time I've always said to Phelim, oh, there's big long lines. And Phelim said, no, that's not a big long line for Costco. That's a big long line for In-N-Out Burger. Yeah. And again, you know, and also from a hygiene point of view, you know, I think, you know, if you think people, they put on like their surgical gloves and they're careful, but they go in the line and get their food from In-N-Out Burger. I mean, probably very little of the packaging has been actually touched by human hands, you know.
And one thing you be sure is none of the food has been touched by human hand. That's the great thing about fast food. Nothing there has been touched by a human hand. And, you know, and also big business has been doing things voluntarily. All the big internet companies have said they will give internet to whoever needs it. They will not cut off internet. Uber Eats have given away their commission. All these companies, Amazon, are hiring new people. Amazon was quickly becoming the bête noire of the left. I mean, all these articles in the New Yorker and all these books about working for Amazon, how terrible and horrible it was. This country would be screwed if it wasn't for Amazon. They have really kept the heart of this country going by delivering what we need when we need it.
I think that when this is all over, I think, you know, people's shopping habits are going to be changed forever. I mean, I think we weren't big into doing much of that online shopping, but I have to say, you know, it's been very good for just sort of random things. We bought some sort of immune boosting things, sort of vitamin things that were recommended from some friends, and you know, and they've arrived, and the packets have arrived at the door. It's extraordinary. I
mean, it was very cool to condemn corporate greed and the greed of executives, but actually the reality is, as we face this disaster, and hopefully it won't be a disaster, we have become the greedy ones. You know, we demand that big business works night and day for us so we can feed our families, and they are happy to do it, providing, you know, they provide us with incredible benefits, and that will save hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, and many of them are low income people. So I would just ask that when this current crisis is over, let's celebrate capitalism. They have saved the future of this country, in my opinion, and it's clear they have. Small business wouldn't be able to do what they have done. They don't have the national and international infrastructure. So long live big business.
And I certainly wouldn't like to be dependent on the government organising a food supply for the country. I much prefer the idea of FedEx and UPS and all these people arriving with stuff, and McDonald's and these stores already having a setup where, you know, they've had Christmas before, by the way. They've had Thanksgiving. They've had 4th of July. This has happened to them before, so they know how to restock shelves. Yes. And I would trust them. I would trust Costco more than I would trust any local municipality to satisfy the needs of the locals here and to know what the locals like. I mean, just a funny thing as well. I seem to be the humour today because I think it's important to laugh, but we had a very good laugh at Trader Joe's. So, and it's one of the things that's fabulous, you know, that's been happening, and it's. People are really great. People on Nextdoor, which is a fantastic app that links neighbours together, and also with just friends groups on WhatsApp, people writing to each other saying, I've just been to Trader Joe's, don't go, don't bother, there's no milk there. And people saying to people where the milk is, where the toilet roll is, where things are. But we went to Trader Joe's the other day, and a friend of mine had written to me in the morning and said she couldn't get in, and it was a complete, you know, really. And then I started texting her as we got into the car park in Trader Joe's a few hours later saying, you should come over to Trader Joe's, it's fine now. And we went in and there was very little on the shelves. But the really funny thing that Phelim spotted was the food people don't like eating. There was loads of it. And by the way, like really good food, by the way, high quality food, but stuff. And I was thinking actually from a consumer point of view, those supermarkets are learning stuff. They're learning like, oh, okay, interesting. And it was these kind of frozen fish. It was
frozen salmon burgers. And actually, I suppose it's better than any focus group actually, because in a focus group, you'll feel pressure to like the posh food or the healthy food. But you know what? When there's a crisis on and you want your pantry stocked full of stuff you will eat, the truth comes out, and it's very clear that the healthy salmon burgers are not what people want.
But I'll tell you, the ice cream is very popular. So you
can read my article about how much we should love big business in the Daily Wire. We'll also put it up on the Facebook page, the Ann and Phelim Scoop. So happy reading.
And, you know, now that people are at home and, you know, a lot of people are playing with their phones, they're playing with their iPads, they're recording stuff. We want to do it. We want to, you know, every now and again look at the best and the worst of the internet. And of course, a lot of celebrities are at home. A lot of celebrities are stuck at home and they're deciding to do. And by the way, and some celebrities have done some brilliant stuff. The first piece that we want to share with you, which we think is, you know, this is the best of the internet. The worst of the internet we will also be covering. Yeah. But the best of the internet, we just thought this was fabulous. And particularly given the fact that we have our cats and we love our cats. Anthony Hopkins, the actor Anthony Hopkins, is obviously confined like the rest of us, and he decided to play the piano for his cat, and it's just gorgeous. Let's have a look. Now, on the other hand, the worst of the internet involves Gal Gadot.
No, Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot, who decided, obviously...
Wonder Woman.
Oh, that's who she is, right? Because I was about to say I didn't know who she was. And by the way, I loved her in into Wonder Woman. I really did, actually. I'm actually looking at her in a completely different way because I was about to say that I didn't really know who she was. But honestly, she decided to phone up her celebrity friends, of which there are many, and get them to all sing a line from that amazing song by John Lennon, Imagine, which is one of the most awful songs ever written.
Yes.
But however bad the song Imagine is, when you couple it with Gal Gadot's friends singing it, it goes to another level of awfulness that you hadn't comprehended, that you hadn't even comprehended.
My concern here is, though, that should we play it all, or should we... It's almost cruel to play it all on our audience, right?
We're going to play a little bit of it.
Well, let's see how much we can actually stand playing, because... It's tough going. It's even worse if you want to watch this on YouTube and you'll see them sing it. Somehow, I think it adds to the awfulness of it. It's amazing. Yeah, it's just awful.
And she has a whole bunch of people, including Jimmy Fallon and Mark Ruffalo. Let's have a look at a little bit of it.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
No hell below us.
Above us only sky.
Imagine no possessions.
It isn't hard to do.
No need for greed and hunger.
Brotherhood of man.
They may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us. And the world will be as one.
But, you know, I have to say the bit that I just love is, you know, it's a song. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. Yoo-hoo-hoo. Yeah, you know what? I imagine, let's imagine that. So, you know, Jimmy Fallon, and I like Jimmy Fallon, by the way, he only earns $16 million a year from his TV show. By the way, that's only from the TV show. He obviously, that would be, you know, that would not be enough for him now. He'd be earning money from doing other things and all of that now, as you might imagine. And, you know, so it shouldn't be hard for him to imagine at all what it might be like if he divided that money up with all the people who even work on his set. Even the people who work on his set, the grips, you know, the people who are operating the cameras, the people who are doing the lighting, the girls who are doing the makeup, who are doing his hair. Imagine dividing up the money between them, you know. Be a fair few of them now, by the way, in that show. There's probably 100 people involved in the show. So, you know, all we've got to say is, you know, imagine and imagine and imagine. Do it. Yes. We just said do it with Stewart. And particularly for Mark Ruffalo, who we have a special place in our hearts, because Mark Ruffalo bought himself a house in Pennsylvania and wanted to stop all fracking, because once he got there and once he had his own little house there, sure, why would you want to do any kind of why would anyone in the area need to make money again, because he has so much money and he's all delighted himself. And Mark Ruffalo, by the way, has a lot to say about capitalism, Phelim, just for your note, you and your capitalistic ideas. Mark Ruffalo, the Avengers star, who is one of the highest paid Hollywood actors, says, you know, he wants an economic revolution to bring an end to capitalism. It's time for an economic revolution. Capitalism today is failing us. It's killing us. It's robbing from our children's future. Mark Ruffalo, do it, do it, do it. Just give it all away. Just give it all away. It's so easy, Mark. It's so easy. Imagine how easy it is, Mark Ruffalo.
Possessions.
Imagine no possessions, Mark Ruffalo. Do it, do it, do it. No one is stopping you, Mark Ruffalo. You awful, awful, horrible person. Stop. Anyway, what an awful song. Sorry for impinging that on you. Other stuff that we thought was kind of funny, and I don't know what category this is in, Phelim. I don't know if this is in the category of worst or best, but you have got to see Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now we're getting a look at his home. We're getting a little look at how he lives. And there's 2 little videos here. We'll get a little clip of each. Let's have a little look.
I just finished a bike ride and a little bit of workout. And I just, keep staying at home and away from the crowds and away from outside. The reason why I'm saying that is because I still see photographs and videos of people sitting in outside cafes all over the world and having a good time and hanging out in crowds. That is not wise, because that's how you can get the virus. That's how you get it, by contact with other people. So stay away from crowds, stay away from being in restaurants and outdoor cafes, especially now in springtime where all the kids are going to the beach and celebrate and drink and all that stuff. This is not a good idea. So stay away from the crowds, go home, and then we can overcome this whole problem, this whole virus in no time. But you got to go and follow those orders. Just remember, stay at home, don't go to crowds. Put that cookie down.
See, the important thing is that you stay at home. I have you two, now I have both of you. Look at this picture here. Okay, no one is allowed out, especially someone that is like 72 years old. After you're 65, you're not allowed at the house anymore in California. So we stay home and we eat here, right? Oh yeah, that's yummy. No more restaurants, okay? No more restaurants, forget all that. Public gatherings, restaurants, and all these gymnasiums out the window. We stay home.
So yes. Nice jacuzzi, by the way, Arnie. Very nice jacuzzi.
Nice miniature horses.
Nice. Tell us about
you would like miniature horses, wouldn't you?
I have always wanted miniature horses.
So.
But here's the thing about Arnie. But here's the thing,
one of them was a donkey, though.
One of them. I think one of them is a miniature horse, apparently, and one of them is a miniature donkey. But here's the thing that we didn't know. So Arnie, of course, is saying to, keep those kids at home. He's telling the kids to stay at home. He's telling people to stay at home because of this incredible, awful thing that's just happened where you have pandemic worldwide. But here's my question for Arnie. I thought that the biggest threat facing us was global warming. I thought we were all going to die from global warming. Is that not what he said? Did he not say that? Was he wrong about that?
Many people said that. And if there's one thing that this crisis has done is showing that there are once every 100 years real crises, but there are also fake crises, and global warming is one of them. And in fact, warmer weather, they believe, is something that may kill this virus, or at very least will allow people to leave confined spaces, and there's less likelihood of spreading. The people won't be meeting in rooms, they'll be outdoors a lot more, and that will slow the spread. So regardless, even if global warming is real, maybe, that was one thing I always found hard to believe about the global warming scare was, why is it that the change in weather that's coming is always negative? Surely there must be some part of the world somewhere that could benefit from this change of the world, because there are so many different climates. In America, in Europe, in Africa, there's, one part of Africa is brown, the other part's green, gorillas in the mist to the Sahara Desert. Surely somewhere the change in weather will be really beneficial to the people who live there. But no, they're telling it's all negative all the time.
Can I say something? It's like global warming is like Trump's presidency. So everything about it is bad. Everything about it is bad. So Trump's presidency, every last piece of it is bad. Nothing is good about it. Those two things have an awful lot in common. And then the last section that we want to go to today, we want to just talk about, because one of the things that's happened as well is, as we said earlier, there's a lot of content being made available for free to people, and lots of really good things that happen. So we just wanted to mention a few.
Lots of really bad things.
And lots of really bad things too. But we wanted to mention a couple of things that are free and that are available to you, and that I think if you're at home and you have more time in your hands, some people are continuing to, we're working the same as we normally do, but some people are forced, are harder, because normally we'd have Magda here helping us with production. So, by the way, apologies on anything in terms of production value that has been lost. You'll all be missing Magda, and as we are very much missing her. We nearly killed each other today organising to get the right things going on here with lights and everything on our own. But let's look at this culture section, things that are free that are fabulous. So one thing that's free that's fabulous is the Met Opera. And if you go to metopera.org, they're putting on for free, they're making available some of their operas. I think pretty much all of the operas that they've done recently, and they're making them available for free. And each one goes up and stays up for about 72 hours. So after 72 hours, then there's a new one. And it's absolutely amazing, beautifully shot, quite a few of them. They're introduced.
We know somebody who'll be very happy with that.
Oh God, it made us remember, actually, by the way, we know somebody who'll be very happy with that. So Kermit Gosnell, famously, when we were interviewing him in prison, Kermit Gosnell, who is Dr. Kermit Gosnell, who is serving 3 life sentences in a prison in Huntington in Pennsylvania for delivering babies alive and killing the abortion doctor, and for murdering them, for cutting their necks with scissors, and he did that for 30 years. So he's America's biggest serial killer. But one of the things he said that was wonderful about prison was that he was able to listen to the Met Opera every Saturday.
It would be broadcast live from the Met Opera, and he would listen to it on the radio. And as he reminded us, of course, he was very lucky he'd actually been to the Met Opera himself. So every time I hear the Met Opera now, I think of a mass murderer. So there you. But maybe I'll watch a bit more of the Met Opera and try and get rid of that image. There's also Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard of Star Trek Next Generation. He's got a lot of publicity. He's reading Shakespeare. We listened to it before we came on here. Not that impressive. A little bit overacting. The voice, I'm not sure the voice still has it. I'm not sure he still has it. Maybe you should listen to it yourself. Patrick Stewart reading Shakespeare.
Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
And also a white male reading another dead white European male. How heteronormative, or whatever that word is. One thing this crisis actually brought home to me is, no one cares about your pronouns now. No one cares about dead white males. Everyone wants culture. Everyone wants the quality. Everyone wants what's important. I don't care about your pronouns. And you know what? No one ever did, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't care about your pronouns. Whatever your pronoun you want, but just don't force me. I will be polite and I will call you what you want to be called. But don't expect me... But don't have me banned from Twitter for doing it. Don't have me lose my job, and don't tell me I have to. And you know what? It's not important. It's actually not important. And dead white males. Do you know what? In times of crisis, dead white males had a lot of wisdom and a lot of interesting things to say. And I think maybe we should all go back. And talking of which, one thing I would really love to recommend, now it's behind a kind of paywall, it's the Mark Steyn reading Daniel Defoe's Plague Diary. So Mark Steyn has a clubland. You can join the Mark Steyn Club. Go to marksteyn.com and you get access to his reading audiobooks, him singing, his videos, him reading poems. Mark Steyn, who sits in for Rush Limbaugh, when Rush is not there, a brilliant writer, a brilliant broadcaster, and he's got this other part of him where you go on his website, he just goes through brilliant poetry, brilliant classics, and he's reading Daniel Defoe's Plague Diaries, which Daniel Defoe, wrote Robinson Crusoe, he wrote Moll Flanders, but between those two he wrote the Plague Diaries, which is a kind of a fake diary of the year that the Great Plague of London. And I just wanted to read you, Mark pulls this out, the introduction to the Plague Diary by the narrator, and it might sound familiar to you. So this is the narrator starting off the book, The Journal of the Plague Year. It was the beginning of September 1664 that I, among the rest of my neighbours, heard in ordinary discourse that the plague was returned again in Holland. We had no such thing as printed newspapers in those days to spread rumours and report on things, and to improve them by the invention of men, as I have lived to see practised since. But such things as they were, gathered from the letters of merchants and others who corresponded abroad, and from them was handed about by word of mouth only, so that things did not spread instantly over the whole nation as they do now. But it seems that the government had a true account of it, and several councils were held about ways to prevent it coming over, but all was kept very private. So, looks like things haven't changed much. Governments are still trying to keep things secret. Word of mouth is still the best way, and newspapers still spread rumours and reports of things and improve them by the invention of men. So Mark Steyn online, steynonline.com. There's a lot of great material there, well worth a membership. It's really important to keep Mark going. You may also know Mark from the Tucker Carlson show. He's on many times on Fox and Friends. A great all-rounder.
And a great friend of ours.
Yes, and you might also like to check out the Mark Steyn Cruise.
Which will be going on, please God.
Please God, yes.
In October. And finally today we want to do, I want to share with you a recipe. I know it's been a while since we haven't been doing recipes, but God, I'll tell you, we're doing a lot of cooking now. A lot of cooking going on here. But this recipe, I just think this is a great recipe. I got shoulder of pork from Costco, by the way, months and months ago, and it, as you probably know, anyone who does shop in Costco, it comes in a massive packaging thing. So I divided it in two, and even half of it is still a huge amount. So I had half left over of this shoulder of pork, which you cut up into small one inch pieces, and it's a pork in cider vinegar sauce recipe from the great Delia Smith, who dresses like a nun, but her recipes are spot on. My mother believed very strongly in Delia Smith's recipes. We're putting up the recipe there, and we're also sharing a little bit of video of us during the cooking process. Have a look. Hi everybody. So we're doing more quarantine cooking, and this is and we're listening to Kenny Rogers.
The late Kenny
Rogers. And if you haven't seen Dolly Parsons on Twitter, her beautiful message to Kenny Rogers is gorgeous. So this is pork braised with cider and apple cider vinegar.
And what are the shallots?
12 shallots, which are going to be, and it's going to go in the oven, which is already heated. And Phelim has...
I've sliced and diced the pork and dried it. Look, drying. I've got it.
And basically, it's just super yummy. And actually, it'll be even nicer tomorrow. Noodles will be really nice too. Big fat noodles.
Okay.
Yummy. What I would do with that recipe is I would serve it with mashed potatoes or flat noodles, as I think I say in one of those videos. I think I might have already said that. But it's really very yummy and enjoy. And it's one of those things that you can eat, you make a lot of it and it only improves with time. So, keep it in the fridge. I wouldn't even eat it the first day. I'd eat it the next day.
Where can people get the recipe?
So the recipe is going to be on the Facebook page, the Ann and Phelim Scoop. Yeah, we'll put it there, and we'll probably put it... Yeah, that's where we're going to put it. I think that's the spot for it. And can everyone as well, please, we'd really love to hear from you. What recipes are you working on now that you're at home? Have you reconstructed or resurrected an old recipe from your family tradition? Please send in the recipes. And also, as we're all spending a little bit more time on the internet, if you find something fabulous on the internet, please do share and let us know. And we look forward to talking to you the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.